Good afternoon, patrons, and welcome to the August Patroncast, which we do in September because that's just what we do around here. Yeah, sorry, I think there's a bunch of people who joined more recently who realised we do this intentionally. This is kind of a running joke. I kind of intentionally like doing them right at the end of the month, and thus releasing 1 month's Patroncast in the following month. But I think a couple of people got the wrong idea and thought that it just meant that I was really lazy with them and was treating them as a really low priority. I really hope not. I hope people don't think that. That was never the intention. I really like kind of running jokes and circular jokes that go on. Those just kind of work quite nicely, and I just like doing these on a monthly basis, but always doing them just a little bit late. It has always been a challenge though, so I really hope people don't feel like, it's a low priority thing for me. It's not a low priority thing for me in the slightest. It's just always been a big question for me, which is Patreon's a hugely important part of letting me actually do this all full time, especially with the fact YouTube is ever unpredictable. We'll get to that in a second. YouTube is ever an incredibly unpredictable source of anything. But yeah, kind of Patreon's hugely important, but I really want to strike the right balance of making sure people who are on Patreon get something back, which is why I want to do this, but I don't want to gate away stuff on the main channel to only Patrons, because I think that would upset a lot of the people who aren't Patrons, and probably some of the Patrons too, because it's not in the spirit or the ethos of their channel. It's a challenge. I hope people feel that this is a fair thing that I do. Anyway, YouTube. Let's start with the really, really big thing. So YouTube's just done a thing, and YouTube's done a thing in the most YouTubey way they could have done, which is they didn't really announce it in advance. They just kind of quietly rolled it out behind the scenes. A whole bunch of stuff happened. They really badly communicated what was going on even after people started calling them out on it, and as a result, it's caused far more panic than it needs to. The brief version is YouTube's always kind of had, various guidelines about what you can and can't put on YouTube and stuff like that. What has potentially just happened is they've slightly changed the way they decide what can and can't be monetized. So, they're basically saying, if you're putting up, something that's very sexual in nature, or has drugs in it, or a few other bits and pieces. I'll kind of put a link in the description below to, the full list of them. What they're basically saying is you aren't allowed to monetize them anymore. You're still allowed to put them up, you can have them up on YouTube as much as you want, but YouTube won't let you run ads against them. Now, naturally, this has caused some form of mass hysteria. Basically, it's a combination of two things, which is YouTube phrased it very, very weirdly. In particular, they included really, really kind of poorly defined terms like controversial topics, war, violence, without kind of, it being specified, well, what's a controversial topic? And, are you even talking about, reporting the news? When you say political disputes, if we mention the US presidential election, is that covered? When you say violence, is that real world violence, or graphic versus non-graphic violence, or video game violence? Does that count? They just did a really bad job defining all their terms. And obviously, as soon as this came out, but YouTube wasn't talking about it, a large number of YouTubers panicked, and a large number of YouTubers who weren't panicking pretended to be panicking and started making big dramatic videos about how YouTube's trying to shut us down, because that is very good clickbait, and that will ironically make them a lot more ad revenue because it'll get a lot of views and it'll all be shared on Reddit and diddly-diddly-dee. So, there was a group of people who were quite self-interested in making this into more drama than it really needs to be. Just kind of as a first kind of level of reassurance, even if this is a really, really big major change, and I don't believe it actually is, we would be affected last out of a very, very long line of people ahead of us. There's things like vulgarity, we very rarely swear on the channel. The sexual stuff, there's not really anything sexual on the channel. Violence, sure, we've got violence on the channel, but it's, it's game violence, and I don't like proper gross violence in games anyway. I really don't enjoy that in the slightest. I like kind of itchy and scratchy, red spurting blood, kind of clearly comic cartoon violence like you get in Fallout, or say in Doom, in the new Doom game. That's blatantly, clearly kind of ridiculously OTT cartoon violence, so it's not kind of gross in the slightest. So I feel like even if they were looking to be really cracking down, I don't think they're going to be. And I don't think they're looking to crack down. If they're looking to crack down on one thing, it's YouTube drama. Because YouTube drama has grown exponentially over the last year, and it started to become the main way that YouTube and YouTube channels stuff actually kind of hit the main news. So, the only reason, people hear about YouTube if they're not actually active YouTube viewers themselves and they don't care about the YouTube community is when they see on BBC News or wherever, oh, there's this, new dramatic flare-up between so-and-so and so-and-so, whatever. And I think it's a bad look for YouTube, and they'd like to start cracking down on those channels. A lot of people have used the term censorship. I'm not sure that's the right term because, as I say, nothing is being banned. They're just cutting monetization on things they don't necessarily like. There's a really big question here about ethics and stuff, and it's a more complicated question than some people have given it credit. 'Cause of course, like, in most territories, YouTube has a complete monopoly, so people who don't like what YouTube are doing don't really have the option to go anywhere else. They either post on YouTube or they don't post anywhere at all, so it all gets very, very confusing as to like what YouTube is doing. If YouTube is the only game in town and they say what does and doesn't pay, and some people who are producing content, it's their job, so it's their only source of revenue, there's a lot of fiddliness and whatever. As I say, I don't think I'll be particularly affected. Like, you know, a lot of people have already said, hey, I was hit with this immediately the moment the change happened, exactly whatever the change was. We don't know, because YouTube 7 PM a couple of days ago specifically said we haven't changed the enforcement whatsoever, despite the fact that by coincidence 24 hours before that, a large number of people started getting these flags when they'd never got them before. So somebody's lying somewhere, quite frankly. So it very likely won't affect me, and it honestly very likely won't affect anyone. The thing is, like, for many, many years now, we've had things about content ID and kind of content matching. What that basically means is if I put a game up and the game has a cutscene, then what's very likely to happen on occasion is YouTube will say, hang on a minute, that bit of visual and audio together is exactly the same as what someone else already posted. And as a result, it'll generate a content ID match and just basically put a big question mark next to it. And there's just like, you know, a little kind of button that I can push saying, hey, I've got a good reason for this. And I can just say the original person who posted that cutscene, they don't own the rights to it either. The rights are owned by this publisher, as is specified in this email or this web page. And as a result, we both have the rights to post that and monetize it, and then like within 24 hours YouTube will be like, oh, okay, that's fair enough, and then they'll release the content ID match and we'll just be kind of quietly getting on with it. So there's always been, you know, ID matching and stuff happening like in the background in YouTube, and there's always been a little button that you can push to kind of query and ask for a human to actually adjudicate the case, which they've generally done very quickly and very efficiently. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. YouTube is now going to start demonetizing certain things they don't want to run ads in front of. Probably, I think the reason they're doing it is so that they can charge the remaining inventory at a higher price, because they'll be able to say to advertisers, hey, we can guarantee your ads will never show in front of like gross violence or extremism or drug use or whatever, so therefore you ought to pay us a little bit more. So that's probably what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and make more money overall by only putting ads in front of, say, 95% of content and excluding the other 5%, but charging a bit more on the other 95% and making more money overall. Possibly. If that is where they're going, that means that YouTubers who are compliant, like I probably am, might make a tiny bit more money. I don't know. That's probably the best case scenario, but no real idea. But as I say, just like with Content ID, there will be a system of appeals, so I think actually, after kind of a little bit of buzz, this will all actually just settle down a little bit, to be honest. I think it'll all pretty much go back to business as usual. Though I do agree there are some real concerns with it, like the fact that YouTube is saying that it doesn't want all controversial topics and all war discussions and all natural disaster discussions on YouTube. That's a bit fiddly, and like when YouTube holds a monopoly, this is what I kind of was referring to on the podcast the other night as soft censorship. Because if you effectively hold a monopoly on like videos that are uploaded by the general public and you control like 99% of that inventory in the world, then if you go and say some things can make money and some things can't, you may not be kind of stopping the things that can't make money existing, but you are saying to people who are generating very watched content, who have very often, in many cases, thanks to the new current YouTube infrastructure and ecosystem, decided to make this their job, just like I have, those people kind of make decisions what to cover or not to cover, and those people have to make a living somehow, so those people are going to start making decisions to favour, quietly, things that can be monetized over things that can't be. So it's not censorship, but it is certainly potentially pushing people into a particular direction. And if I had to guess what YouTube wants to get rid of, they want to get rid of stuff, I suppose, that kind of brings YouTube into disrepute more widely. They want people to be watching, you know, happy, positive stuff where they're part of engaged communities that, you know, like each other and like have a proper community and everything's nice. If YouTube were theoretically to look at the Many a True Nerd community, they'd probably think, brilliant, that's fantastic. The comment section is civil, people talk to each other down there, there's actually some really interesting stuff that comes out in the comments, like after the Turing test, there were some really interesting comments and discussions in the comments, that was really, really fascinating. And like when I was discussing, there was one episode of Fallout 4, I think it was Survival Mode in the Glowing Sea, where I was like talking about what effect the nuclear blast would have had on planes, where the planes would have been knocked out of the sky. And there was some really interesting discussion in the comments about that. So I think like YouTube would think that's a really good sort of community to have. Whereas a community that's dedicated to harassment and brigading and this kind of swatting thing that happens in America, I imagine communities that have a lot of that and are very negative and toxic, YouTube probably wouldn't mind just kind of slowly shuffling those communities out the door. So if I had to guess, I'd say that's what they're planning to do. I don't think this is going to make any big difference to the overall ecosystem at all, to be honest. In a perfect world, it might even clean it up slightly, and I think even if it does start making big changes, we'd be the last in a very long queue of people it would affect. So don't worry about that. That should be fine. But yeah, it makes me glad that Patreon does exist, because yeah, YouTube just makes these big changes sometimes, and, you know, Content ID will be a big thing one day, and then copyright strikes will be prevalent all over the place another day, and then they'll just ban monetization on various videos the next day, and they'll never trail it. It'll just sort of happen overnight. And some people's livelihoods might just disappear in a puff of smoke or get halved, and something that was sustainable won't be sustainable anymore. And that's really sad. Because, you know, I know that it can take years, from experience, I know it can take years to build up a community and a channel and a thing that's big enough and that you're proud enough of and that's strong enough and has a brilliant community within it that lets you actually do this full time. So to kind of have the rug pulled out from under you without any warning by YouTube, it stings. It stings a bit, and I can see why some people are upset. But I suspect the dust will settle and this won't make a huge difference. But just like Dan was saying on podcast the other night, he's very glad he's got game development going on in the background. In a similar vein, this is what I want to do for now, at least. Like, I don't have a plan B at the moment, but I'm really glad Patreon is here, because yeah, it means that even if YouTube goes crazy and one day just decides, now ads aren't a thing anymore, or now ads are everywhere anymore, or now ads can only be served by people whose name is Tim, it doesn't matter, because I'll still have a baseline income off Patreon, which means I can live, which is lovely. Anyway, that's probably the biggest thing. Let's also discuss the other thing, which is Nuke Award. I think a few questions kind of came on Nuke Award, so I'll just kind of briefly talk about Nuke Award now in terms of like, I don't know if I'll like do a review on the channel, but just kind of give my thoughts. I really genuinely like it. Like, I was actually discussing this for like an hour or two with Matt after the end of the last podcast. A ruined theme park is just absolutely flipping perfect. You know, it was colourful, and you can see that it was colourful, and that's what Fallout's about. Fallout's not about colourful or about grey and broken down. Fallout, like, at its best, is where you can see it was once beautiful and sci-fi and dystopia, and now it's broken down. And a theme park, you know, with peeling paint and shattered windows and stuff, where it used to clearly be the happiest place on Earth, but now it's gone to hell. That's the perfect place. The level design's fantastic. I love how all the worlds are kind of like very open, and you can kind of jump around all over the place. And if you've got a jetpack, you can kind of jetpack all over the place. And yeah, they're just kind of very open areas. It shares weaknesses with Fallout 4. It's a little bit combat heavy, like especially in the Nuka bottling plant, the World of Refreshment. That's basically just killing Mirelurks, which is not so fun. So that's probably, to my mind, easily the weakest world. But meanwhile, Kiddie Kingdom is fantastic and has a brilliant subplot that's got a couple of stings in the tail to it. That's a fantastic little world there, the Magical Kingdom quest in Kiddie Kingdom. That is just genuinely fantastic, and I would recommend you thoroughly explore all of Nuka World if you've just done Kiddie Kingdom and you haven't kind of thoroughly explored, because there's a real sting in the tail to that quest that's really fantastic to come across. Very, very good indeed. So yeah, I think the story's kind of very, very... The story's interesting. Like, I find it like it's a bit odd and a bit kind of OTT even by Fallout standards, you know, being kind of thrown straight into being king of the raiders, and then like, you know, some of the stuff that happens later I don't want to kind of go into. Maybe it's a little bit... It's a little bit contrived, I guess. It might be a bit much, but I really like it as an ending. Like, Fallout 4, if you compare it to New Vegas, and even to Fallout 3, in fact, if you compare it basically to all of the modern 3D Fallouts, Fallout 4 is probably the happiest and the least dark. Sure, it's got kind of moments of levity and moments of darkness. All Fallout games have that. They've got that balance of, you know, life and death and levity and darkness to them. And Fallout 3 was probably kind of relatively grim most of the time. It was quite dark and desperate and oppressive and lonely out in the Capital Wasteland, and Fallout New Vegas was kind of probably skewing more towards like, you know, civilization and happiness and a recovering society, but with moments of real darkness, a very intense darkness, but lots of it didn't have that to it at all. There was a lot of kind of politics and intrigue and all sorts of stuff like that. There was a lot of philosophical questions in New Vegas, so there wasn't quite so much darkness going in there, but the darkness that was there was really, really dark. I think kind of Fallout 4 is lighter than both of them, which is, for the most part, it's lighthearted and it's fun. It's not particularly oppressive. I'd say like running around the Commonwealth is a lot kind of less lonely and eerie and haunting than running around in the Capital Wasteland in Fallout 3 in particular. And that's fine. I'm not saying that's a criticism. Like, a game can go darker or lighter, and as long as there's like a bit of both, I'm generally happy because I like that variety, especially in my Fallout games. And in Fallout 4, I feel like it is a very kind of light-hearted game for the most part, just with kind of little moments of darkness here and there, little stories and characters and just little side little things where things get suddenly very, very dark indeed. And Nuka World has fantastic moments like that. But Nuka World, I think, overall is light-hearted and happy and a little bit silly, and so's large parts of Fallout 4. And again, totally 100% fine with that, so I think it's fine as an ending. It's almost an interesting way to do an ending, that as an ending to a game and as the franchise of Fallout 4 as a kind of a whole thing, to end it with your protagonist basically going on a vacation and becoming king and then going on some wacky adventures and then kind of basically wrapping up by taking over a theme park that becomes your personal theme park where you can just ride the roller coaster off into the sunset. That's fine. That's lovely. I'm totally fine with that. I don't need to, you know, it be revealed I'm actually secretly a twin and my evil twin wants to bomb the Commonwealth and I have to go to the end of the earth to fight him one-on-one and something. That's fine. If you can pull it off and you can build up to it, and New Vegas spent a lot of time over 5 DLC packs building up to that really dark moment with Ulysses and the final confrontation, and that works brilliantly if you can build up to it. Fallout 4 didn't really want to build up to that. Fallout 4 was happier being a lighter-hearted, kind of buildy, crafty, runny, roundy sort of game. Again, absolutely 100% fine, and I think Nuka World is a fine way to end it. Though I don't want to talk about the ending in detail, because I know I haven't actually shown the ending on the channel just yet, so maybe I'll do a discussion piece or a review on the channel. If I don't, I'll discuss the ending of Nuka World and how I kind of feel it fits into the whole DLC package and versus the base game as well on the next Patroncast, perhaps anyway. Anyway, let's move on to the questions, which I'll go through in, let's do reverse order this month, so starting with the first questions and moving to the most recent. Will there be any kind of Hitman Kill Everything episode for the new game? Possibly, yes. The thing is, as someone who's kind of well known for doing challenge runs like Kill Everything, it's really tempting for me to just do things like, no kill everything, you only live once in literally every game, because, like, generally if I do that, it gets more views. But, like, I don't want to become, like, a big clickbaity person like that. Like, I try and use it responsibly, which is I only do the traditional series I'm known for if there's an actual point to it, and if I'm absolutely certain it would work really well. Like, the easiest thing in the world for me to have done would have been to the New Vegas at the moment, to be doing like Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything remastered, rather than the Fallout New Vegas, when it's called Survival, it's not really Survivalist. It's more just like Fallout New Vegas, Jay Sawyer, and Completionist and Modding series, but that's a little bit less catchy. But I didn't want to do New Vegas Kill Everything remastered unless I thought it was genuinely gonna like have a reason to exist, like it was gonna be really worthwhile and really high quality and stuff, and I wasn't convinced it was going to be. So I've got nothing against a Hitman Kill Everything. I would only do it, however, if I thought there was something worth doing. Like, I've only done one Hitman Kill Everything so far, and that was back in Blood Money, that was in Murder of Crows. And the reason I did that is because there was only one level in Blood Money that had, like, the crowds of people, and that they weren't really proper people, but there was, like, hundreds or thousands of people in that level, so there was nowhere near enough ammo, so you'd just, like, literally be killing them with a knife. But because they weren't proper, like, characters, they didn't have proper, like, intelligence to them, they just kind of vaguely wandered away with their hands covering their heads if you started slashing them with a knife. So it was kind of funny, it was just a joke video. It's a really good video, by the way, I think it's genuinely quite a good video to this day. But I might well do a Kill Everything, but only if there's a point to it, like not just for the sake of doing kill everything, but I might do, I don't know. How do mobile views affect you? Should I always watch on a computer if possible? One, if you're on Patreon, you watch however the hell you want. You turn on those ad blockers and you watch any device you want. I don't care, you're on Patreon. If you're giving $1 a month, then you could probably sit watching ads for a couple of hours a day, every day for an entire month, and you wouldn't have generated as much ad revenue as that dollar. So you're forgiven. Do whatever the hell you bloody want. But I was actually interested in the question, so I went into my analytics. I can't find a way for YouTube to show me ad revenue split out by device type. I can't find a report that lets me look at that. So I'm not sure. Logically, mobile views are worth less, but I really wouldn't worry about it because like mobile views have been like 20% of all of my views like forever. So like if a fair few people are watching on mobile, it really doesn't matter in the slightest. What are my thoughts on Mass Effect Andromeda? Okay. My first thought is, I'm a little bit concerned that it's coming early 2017, and we really have not seen much of it yet. Then again, I suppose the gap between Fallout 4's total announcement and being launched was relatively small, and that worked out well, because I personally think Fallout 4 is absolutely fantastic. But if I can put that aside, and if I can assume, okay, fine, maybe they've just been quietly working on it, you know, in the background for years and whatever, then I like some of the direction it looks like it might be going in. You know, I like the fact they're talking about planets and the Mako and exploration, because like having a bit of planet to explore in the Mako is always one of my favourite bits of Mass Effect 1. It gave the universe a sense of bigness. So I'm glad that's there, though, again, it's really hard to kind of verify whether that's really true or not, and whether that's going to be the case or not, because until we've actually seen some proper gameplay footage, like when we're talking about the Mako could be, here's a big kind of chunk of planet, just go around and explore as much as you want and find interesting stuff and do stuff like in Mass Effect 1, or it could be more like, say, a plot mission in Mass Effect 1, where you get dumped down in a fixed position and there's like, you know, a predefined route you just go along, so it's not actually open at all, you're just basically driving the tank to a given area when you hop out and do the rest of it on foot. Until we know that, it's really hard to evaluate. One thing I'll say I'm really happy they're doing is it's entirely separate from the previous games. I think if this was like, you know, a prequel or a kind of a sequel or a story taking place at the same time, or like a Tales from Mass Effect set in the, you know, the war against the Reapers or something, that would be really, really worrying, because that would mean they were kind of, you know, wallowing in the same old pool. The fact that they've basically specifically said, no, new ship, new protagonist, new entire galaxy, so therefore, you know, the Council and the Citadel and all the fleets that we're used to can't really be there. None of them can just show up. That's better, because it lets them actually start afresh and just kind of come up with everything from nothing. Because in the end, maybe the problem with Mass Effect 3 wasn't a particular specific thing that you can kind of point at. The problem with Mass Effect 3 is it couldn't stand up to the weight of everything that was piling on top of it. Nothing in Mass Effect 3, no matter how good Mass Effect 3 was. And I think Mass Effect 3 is a lot better than people give it credit for, just because people were really annoyed by the ending, so they forget that up to the ending, the game was fantastic, and Rannoch and T'Chunga and all of that were really, really, really damn bloody good. And there's a lot of really, really good bits and really fantastic endings for, especially for Talion Legion. For Talion Legion on Rannoch, that was just perfect. That was genuinely the perfect ending for Rannoch and those characters, and the Quarians and the Geth. That was just brilliant. But the actual war against the Reapers, that was always going to struggle to live up to what people kind of wanted it to be. So I'm kind of glad that they've just kind of said, nope, none of that, start all again from fresh. But again, it's very hard to evaluate, because until we know what state this new galaxy that they're exploring is going to be in, like, we can't really know. Like, if this galaxy is going to be, like, you know, a completely wild new frontier where there's not much in the way of, like, civilization. There's, like, you know, there's sentient life, but there's not much in the way of civilization. And we're basically going out as, like, frontiersmen building the first society, and then kind of exploring these wild frontiers and kind of, you know, being part of a great western expansion, if you like. That's very, very different to if we arrive in this galaxy and there's already just a whole new bunch of aliens who have their own thing. And then if those aliens are really, really hostile, then, you know, it might be like a big war game straight away. And if those aliens are really, really friendly, it might be a lot more like Mass Effect 1, where we're the newcomers to the galaxy and we're just going around, meeting up with people and trying to figure out how we fit into things. The tone and the genre and everything will be incredibly different depending on the context, and we don't know enough about the context yet. So it's very hard to evaluate how I feel about Mass Effect Andromeda. Like, there's a couple of base things like, okay, exploration of planets, wandering around in the Mako, brand new galaxy, no Commander Shepard and the Reapers and whatever, they've left all that behind. That's all promising, but I think I just don't have enough information to evaluate. I'm really looking forward to seeing some proper gameplay at some point. I don't think I've actually heard anything about them going to be at EGX this year, because I'm going to be at EGX again this year as usual. I don't think I've heard anything about Andromeda being at EGX, so we'll see. But I'm quietly hopeful a bit, but until we know more, it's really hard to evaluate. Do you think the way that Hitman is distributing gameplay is the future of these types of games? No, not entirely, but equally, yes, it's just fine. Like, from a purely selfish perspective, it works really, really well for me. Because, like, the really annoying thing about some games, for me as a YouTuber, is I'll get a game, and then I basically have to, like, rush it out as quickly as possible. But if I want to do a full playthrough of it, then that takes a really, really, really long time. Like, you know, normally I can do, like, a mid-length kind of campaign in, like, 20 parts or something, and that's with heavy editing, where the parts are like 30 to 45 minutes or something like that. So I think, like, what was Far Cry 4 and did the full series? I think that was 18 parts or something, about kind of that length. So generally, like, a full series takes me somewhere in the range of 20 parts if I'm doing the full campaign of a game. And that's a lot of commitment. And then you get into question as to, does all of that kind of have to happen, like, as soon after launch as possible while people are still excited and interested in it? And if I do, am I committing to, like, filling up 2 or 3 video slots a week on one game for the next, like, 6-7 weeks? And what happens if something else comes out in those 6 weeks that's even better? And what happens if the game turns out to be kind of terrible, like, halfway through, and I get bored of it, but some people are still enjoying it? Like, do I cut it off there or not? And, like, just the standard release, though I think a lot of people prefer it, and I probably prefer, like, the traditional release format of pay X amount of money and get full game, and then later there might be some DLC, works for me better. But Hitman's very selfishly, from a YouTube perspective, works great, because I can get the game, I can show you, like, going through the new mission, like, in one video, then later that week I can do, like, a full story or a Silent Assassin suit-only playthrough, and then maybe I can do, like, all the fun different kind of opportunities, and there can be, like, 2 or 3 videos, and that's that episode done. Then a month later, there'll be a new episode, and I can do that again. And it's very relaxing. It's very, very nice and relaxing to do, because it means I can just get the episode and just kind of play it for a few hours, get a couple of videos out of it, and then we're done for the next one. So it's not like a crazy rush, because doing kind of getting a new game I'm really excited for, and kind of trying to figure out how much I should do and when that goes out and where I should stop and how many people do or don't want it to continue. Very, very, very difficult. So selfishly, I think it's really, really good. Do I think all games should be like that? No, because not all games kind of suit that. Hitman is almost uniquely qualified to be an episodic game, because the whole point is the levels are very, very big and very, very open and very, very sprawling and full of secrets and conversations and opportunities and disguises and different approaches. So you can, like, get one level and you can play it, like, 10, 20 times and come up with different stuff each time. So you can easily get, like, well, I can anyway, I can easily get, like, 10 to 20 hours of entertainment out of each level, and then there's, like, 6 or 7 episodes, so I'm getting, like, you know, somewhere between, like, 60 and 120 hours of entertainment out of this game, which is more than I'd probably get out of just, like, any other game that was just, you know, launched as a full release. But plenty of games don't do that, because plenty of games don't have that level of replayability, and that doesn't work for everyone. Like, I've spoken with Dan about this in the podcast on several occasions, where he doesn't like that, because he likes playing through Hitman levels once, and that being how he did it, and then he just moves on, and he doesn't really do Hitman for the replayability. He likes doing Hitman for the challenge and as kind of a one-off thing, and then moving on. So it doesn't work for everyone, but personally, I think Hitman is an appropriate game to go episodic, and selfishly as a YouTuber, it works really nicely for me. But I think there's, like, huge numbers of games which should not be cut up like that. Like, any game which has got, like, a big open world, you know, and continuity to it. Like, Fallout, I don't see how that could ever work as an episodic game, because what would you do? Like, cut up the map into little segments or something, or have, like, different bits of the plot in each episode, but have the full world, in which case kind of feels... No, there's just some open world games especially that don't work, but Hitman, with its replayable levels, is uniquely qualified for it to work. Hello, John, you're 40 years old. I didn't know cartons of eggs lasted that long. I'm not 40. That was a joke on the podcast. I'm not that old, but I am 30. That's the truth. That's the truth. I am 30, which is not as anywhere near as depressing as I feared it might be. It's fine. Like, you know, you hear some people kind of hit 30 and they have that kind of the midlife crisis or whatever. No, fine. Birthdays have never been a big deal for me, to be honest. So yes, in mid-August, I was 30. I was born in 1986, a child of the 80s, the best decade for producing children, clearly. And it terrifies me that people who were born in, like, you know, after the year 2000 can do stuff like join the army and have sex and whatever else you can do when you're 16. That's terrifying. Truly, truly terrifying. But yes, I'm not 40. That was just a joke on the podcast. And on the podcast, I think I will just kind of gently hint that I'm older and older and older as I go along. But no, I am not 40, but I am 30. That is actually my age. And in the latest podcast, you said that Firewatch has the best love story in any video game you've ever played. I was wondering whether you had ever played To the Moon or were aware of it. I am aware of it. I've got it in my Steam library. I've never got round to it because I've got like 500 games in my Steam library. They just kind of... They come from all over the shop. Like, I'm a person who buys bundles. I really like buying bundles. Whenever I see a bundle of 14 games I've never heard of for $1, I will always buy it and then never play it. But actually, I am actually planning to, like, do a little series on that at some point, where I'm just going to, like, just basically find those games in my Steam library where I don't know where they came from, so they must have come from a bundle, and just, like, play a couple of those with no idea what they are or what they're like or anything. That sounds really fun to me. So I'm going to do that at some point soon. I've recorded the first part of that already. I played like one of these weird hunting game things. It was actually quite good. I quite enjoyed it, all things considered. And I know To the Moon is in my Steam inventory, but I've not played it. It's one I want to look at. Like, actually, one of the games that's been in my Steam inventory forever that people recommend that I never got around to before, that I have recently played, is Monster Loves You. I've recorded a brief 3-part series just going through the life of one monster. I'm not sure when that's going to come out. Like, I have a big backlog of just like spare videos that just like actually don't have a kind of a place they're going to be launched. They're just basically like... The way my scheduling works, by the way, is obviously I've got my series that are kind of fixed in place. And this kind of is actually addressing a question that came up elsewhere, actually, which is a few people were actually like asking me, hey, there's been lots of double video days kind of recently. What does that mean? What that generally means is like in the event of a series that's not a Fallout series, I believe like after the first part, it shouldn't be the only video that's on a given day for the most part, because people who choose not to watch that series should have something to watch too. So for example, Stellaris comes out on Tuesday and Thursday, but just because Stellaris is out on Tuesday and Thursday, that doesn't mean there shouldn't be anything else. I like there being something else on Tuesday and Thursday as well. And the same's true for Mass Effect. Mass Effect is always on Saturday, but I like there being something else on top of that as well. Fallout's a bit different because Fallout's very viewed, so I feel like Fallout can probably live on its own. So, you know, the New Vegas series on Sunday and Fallout on Monday and Friday can kind of just be on their own. But I like other series on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday to have something else in with them as well. So basically, like, the way that I plan my week is I will just kind of say, okay, so I know where the series are going to be. So Monday, Friday, and Sunday are spoken for with Fallout already. That's fine. Then we're going to have Stellaris on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. But there needs to be something else on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So that leaves me with 4 slots that need to be filled. So we need to put something on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So what I'll do when I'm planning this, and this will be basically planned about 2 or 3 weeks ahead, what I'll do is I'll literally just kind of say, okay, what videos have I made that haven't actually gone out yet? I.e. videos that I've actually done and edited and rendered and are just sitting on a hard drive waiting to be uploaded. And I'll look through the selection of what I've got available. 17 of them, though several of them are like, you know, 3 parts of something, like 3 parts of Monster Loves You and 3 parts of this and 2 parts of that. So it's more kind of like probably like 10 things that could go up. And I'll just select my favourite ones and I'll just slip them into the schedule. But then what will happen as we get closer to that week, so let's say we're talking about things that are 2 or 3 weeks out at the moment, is games will launch. You know, indie devs will email me and say, hey, we've got this really cool thing, are you interested? And sometimes it'll be terrible and I'll say no, and sometimes it'll be really interesting and I'll go, ooh, yeah, actually I am. I would love to cover this. And I'll say, okay, and that's really interesting, and also that only just came out, so that's more relevant and interesting. So I'll kick out what was originally going to be there and move it back down to kind of like a little long list of reserve videos, and I'll just do something that's brand new instead. So, for example, yesterday, on Saturday, we did The Other 99. Now, The Other 99 was recorded very, very recently because it only came out, I think, a little bit over a week ago or something. But I thought it was really, really interesting and kind of cool. So I decided to just kind of do The Other 99 and edit it and render it and just kind of have it out really, really soon. But as a result, there's like videos that I made like a month or 2 ago sitting in the long list that just are waiting for a slot to be released because they're not like relevant. Like I like stuff like if I've just kind of found something that's really cool and it's brand new, I like to get that video out while it's still brand new. And that's because more people are interested in it, and like, you know, the game's, you know, new, so it's a bit more news and people might search for the game and we might rank in YouTube. So there's a bit of kind of, you know, me as a YouTuber making a tactical decision there. But it's also just because older stuff, it doesn't matter whether it comes out this week or next week or the week after, because it's already old, so it just doesn't matter. So for example, I've made this, like, I've got a little video of Injustice, Gods Among Us, which I picked up ages ago when it was on sale, and that just now sits in my backlog, because, like, it's not pressing, it's not urgent, it'll just go up whenever there's a spot. And it's quite a short video. I think it's only like a 20-minute video or something, because I cut a lot out. Because it's mainly me talking about, like, the story more than anything else, because the story in Injustice Gods Among Us is slightly wacky. So that's kind of just been sitting in the backlog for a month or two. I can't remember how long it's been in there now. And at some point, you'll see that. But, like, I think it was originally going to be coming out next week, but then it got kicked out because I heard there was a new release I wanted to cover. So instead, there's going to be a new release on Wednesday instead of that. So that's kind of how my scheduling kind of sort of works, which is why there's kind of double video days, and also kind of how things just work in general. I just remember the question I was supposed to be answering was, had I ever heard of To the Moon? But I got a bit distracted there. Yes, I have heard of To the Moon. It is actually in my Steam library, and it's probably the sort of game which at some point I will play, and it'll go into the backlog, and therefore it will just kind of sit there. Because yeah, are there any other games you're likely to have heard of that's sitting in the backlog right now? There's FTL in the backlog, you know. I actually have a small multi-part FTL series just sitting in the backlog, which I recorded ages ago when my computer was... I can't remember why my computer was tied up now, probably because I was rendering like a few things in a row. So I just went and used Claire's computer. I just recorded some FTL on Claire's computer and just really quickly edited and rendered it. So I've got like a multi-part FTL series just kind of waiting. I've got a new visual novel that's kind of weird and crazy. I've got This War of Mine. This War of Mine Part 1 and 2. I've got two-part This War of Mine little look, which I know a lot of people would like to see. So that's just kind of sitting there. So that'll show up at some point. I don't know when. I think I've even mentioned This War of Mine in a previous Patroncast, by the way. I swear I've mentioned that in a previous Patroncast, where I said, and by the way, this month is finally going to be the month where you get This War of Mine. In fact, I think it might have been March. I think it was originally supposed to go out in March, but then, like, other stuff that was, like, current came out, so I did that instead. So there's This War of Mine. It's just been sitting there that must have been there for months. And This War of Mine I recorded, like, 5 months ago, and now it's just sort of waiting. And then there's a couple of, like, little indie games and bits and pieces you probably won't have heard of, but they will show up sooner or later. What job did I do before I did YouTube, and did a classics degree actually help in any way? Well, the answer to that second part is no, because it doesn't matter what the job would be, a classics degree would not help unless you were a teacher of classics. I was in a generalist kind of marketing thing. I don't generally talk about it at the channel because, like, I think people have a very bad view of people who worked in marketing. They kind of make the assumption that people who work in marketing are evil people who wear suits and smoke cigars which are lit with $50 bills. I mean, I'm not sure why we'd have $50 bills in Britain, but, you know, we'd import some purely to light our cigars with while kind of resting our feet on a footstool made of dead baby seals or something. But the truth is, it was basically just an office job like any other. I was more of a data analyst anyway, to be honest. I've always been very, very good at data analysis. I'm very, very good at Excel. I'm I'm pretty damn solid at, like, data visualization, like taking data and putting it into a comprehensible form and then kind of analyzing it and projecting it forward and coming up with recommendations that came out of it. I did, like, when I came out of university, I actually really wanted to go into, like, research, do, like, a research firm and join, like, the big research firms that kind of pitch their services going in and doing project work for other businesses, and I got through to, like, the final stages of interview with a couple of, like, the big research house projects, but it never really worked out. But no, classics didn't help at all in that. What helped out was the fact that my classics degree came from Oxford University, which is where I went. I studied classics at Oxford, and the thing is, that kind of comes with a certain level of, I don't want to say prestige, because that sounds really twatty, but it kind of does, which is, like, if you kind of say to an employer that you've got a degree from Oxford University, they approach you with the assumption, therefore, that you are, you know, you're intelligent and you've got some decent critical thinking skills and you'll be able to learn things pretty quickly. And I hope that's true for me. It used to be anyway, but now I'm 30 and my mind's probably going to sludge slowly and I probably couldn't remember half of what I used to, but never mind, eh? But no, the classics didn't help. But what did help was the fact that I studied something that I loved, and was good at, and as a result I got into a better university. And honestly, like, I would recommend to people who are thinking about university now, like, if you have a choice of doing something vocational you're not very good at like a middling university, or you could do something that you loved and thus were much more passionate about and much better at, and thus were more likely to get into a better university, I would always recommend going for the best university that you can get to. So I would kind of recommend doing a degree in what you love at the best university you can get into, because that probably is a pretty good way of getting forward, because having a degree from a solid university that's well respected will be useful to you even if the subject itself is useless. And it means you get to study something you love, which means you'll have a better time with it. So, you know, win-win, hopefully, anyway. I love the Turing test. I was watching it today, and the comment section under your videos is something exceptional. It really is. It's especially noteworthy as, like, YouTube comment is like a running joke. It's shorthand on the internet for garbage and hatred and trolling and memes and smiley faces and whatever. But I love the comments under our videos. I love that I can just dig into any video and like there's really, really kind of like interesting, intelligent discussion that actually occurs. I think it's kind of one of the things that lets me kind of keep reading the comments, because there's a lot of comments these days. There's an awful lot. Hang on, let me actually find out how many comments there are. I've literally got my analytics in front of me, so I can actually find this out for you live. Let's just figure out, like, over the last like month, the last 28 days, 30 days, how many comments have there been? 12,000. There's been 12,000 comments in the last 30 days, and I still make an effort to try and read all of them. Some of them I might miss, because the way I read comments is in kind of the backstage comments area within YouTube, because like YouTube basically sends notifications, email notifications for each kind of comment individually, so that becomes unmanageable. So instead I read comments in the kind of the back end comments report, which kind of clumps comments together in their proper threads, so it's all kind of properly arranged. But that means, like, if there's a thread that kind of was low down and then kept expanding, I might miss that. So there is stuff I kind of miss, but like I do try and make an effort to read everything, and it's remarkable how for the most part it is actually genuinely like interesting and useful and has helpful advice, and people generally chat to each other and they're lovely to each other. It's great. Have I considered playing Submerged on the channel? Honestly, no. I've heard of it, but I've never really looked into it in great detail. There's kind of a couple of different kind of underwater games I do actually want to look at some point. Maybe I do an underwater week. That might be fun. Potentially then, yes. Am I a fan of superhero comics, movies, and TV shows? Who is my favourite superhero? I've never been a big comics reader, to be honest. When I was younger, I was really into Preacher. I really loved the Preacher graphic novels. To my shame, I kind of say, looking back now, because I kind of look back now and I kind of thought they were the coolest thing ever when I was a teenager. I thought they were so damn cool and so edgy and they were brilliant. I look back now and I kind of think, oh dear. Because looking back now, like, they really are just like controversial for the sake of controversial and just a never-ending stream of swear words and taboos and ridiculous nonsense. And it is kind of like... It is like it's written by a teenager trying to be as hardcore and metal as possible when they don't really know what hardcore and grown-up and adult means. It reminds me of that game I did, Dex, where like it was the cyberpunk game where like every other like random junk item you found was like pornography and condoms and like, yeah, this is grown-up because there's porn everywhere. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, but that's the epitome of juvenile. It's not adult in the slightest. You've taken something that's adult and you've made it juvenile, and that's what Preacher is. It's incredibly juvenile. It's still kind of fun, and some of the art's alright, but I look back now and think, no, that was a mistake. Superhero movies I do enjoy, though. I am kind of into I wouldn't say I'm kind of big into the MCU. There's a lot of people who are bigger into the MCU than me, but I do kind of watch everything that comes out in the MCU. Sorry, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in case you've never heard the acronym before. I do kind of keep up with what's going on in the MCU as well. So, like, I've generally got a pretty good idea with what's going on. I think it's a really interesting experiment. Like, if nothing else, it's a fascinating experiment in kind of, you know, like, a whole universe where each film is only a snapshot in the same universe and one film flows into another, but equally they've all got to work independently. It's a really fascinating achievement. And my favourite TV show for superheroes... Ooh, that's interesting. You know, I really enjoyed Smallville back in the day. I genuinely thought Smallville was excellent. In fact, like, I've kind of seen the more recent Superman movies, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. I just kind of feel like, I genuinely don't like them. I think they're terrible. I really feel like they would have been better off just straight up running Smallville into a film. Because Smallville, where Smallville ended after, what was it? Was it 7 or 8 series? I can't even remember now. But it ran for a lot of series. And then pretty much at the end of Smallville, finally Clark actually became proper, traditional Superman that we know. So that would have been the perfect leaping off point to put him straight into a film and start a film franchise out of that. Because it actually had the groundwork done already. And Smallville was genuinely really good. Like in its early series where it was more like Monster of the Week, like the first series of Buffy. I thought it worked really well there. It did some really interesting stuff with the Superman canon. There were some really fun characters in it. I just thought it was great. I loved Smallville. It was fantastic. Who's my favourite superhero? Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. I didn't really like Amazing Spider-Man, but I liked the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man. Even Spider-Man 3 is like, alright. Ish. It's fun at least. But Spider-Man, the original films, Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 are fantastic. They're great little films and I really enjoy that portrayal of Spider-Man. Though I did also really enjoy Spider-Man's cameos in Civil War, so I'm looking forward to Spider-Man Homecoming. Interesting discussion here, which is someone put forward, we've been paying $60 or whatever for 15 years plus now, but because of the rising cost of producing games, increasing difficulty in marketing and crowded gaming market and inflation, devs and publishers' cut per copy sold has been decreasing during the years, and as a result that's led to the rise of pre-order bonuses, map pack DLCs, season passes, microtransactions, etc, etc. Would the solution be to pay a higher upfront cost for AAA games in order to guarantee a break-even and avoid bad business practices like the aforementioned ones? Really interesting question. And I think it could go multiple ways, and I think obviously, it won't go just one way. There'll be various solutions. One solution is games need to cost less, and games absolutely can cost less because indie games have come on and made some really, really strikingly beautiful games without needing to cost like hundreds of millions of dollars to make. Whether it be very, very stylized art or particular art styles or animation or what have you, indie games have sometimes done a fantastic job looking beautiful while being a very kind of small team has very, very cheaply put them together. There's also another side of it which I kind of don't really want to mention because it kind of feels a bit mean to the devs, but they could just make games that aren't terrible, which is, as a general rule, if you make a really, really massive, very, very expensive game, but it's widely regarded as, very, very beautiful and very well put together and very, very fun, it does very, very well anyway. The Witcher 3 is probably the best example of that floating around right now, which is The Witcher 3 obviously has no microtransactions or whatever. Witcher 3 was just a full-price AAA game that sold incredibly well. And I think that part of the reason it sold incredibly well is because there's a rising backlash, and it will continue to rise, against microtransactions. If you kind of look in particular at, say, the Steam reviews and the Steam ratings for games that are really, really damn solid games, but have what is deemed to be excessively aggressive microtransactions and whatever, and side modes, and generally feel like they're milking people, you'll see that they're not very good. Like, Deus Ex Mankind Divided is a really, really solid core game, but Deus Ex Mankind Divided is being slaughtered in the Steam reviews and has had a lot of negative backlash because it has microtransactions in its campaign that let you kind of basically level up whenever you want for money, and they're single use only, and diddly diddly dee. And there's all sorts of trouble with that because, there's two ways that goes. When you introduce microtransactions that basically let you level up whenever you want, it's a Praxis kit in Deus Ex, but it could be a level up anywhere. It's like, if you paid $1 to level up whenever you wanted to in Fallout 4, horrible, horrible world that we would live in if that were the case. Either the game is balanced in such a way as to encourage you to buy those level ups, in which case the game has been poorly balanced for people not buying the level ups, and thus the game is unfairly hard to people who don't want to continue paying, or you balance the game fairly for people who aren't buying microtransactions and the level ups are just an optional extra, in which case anyone who buys the level ups is actually screwing themselves out of a better gaming experience because they've just paid money to break well-tested game balance. So neither of those things is good. And I think we will actually continue to see that. I think we'll see more and more backlash against these business practices. And ultimately, I think a large number of people, huge amounts of gamers, are just basically sitting at the sidelines saying, just make something good and charge me $60 for it. And that's all they want. We just want a good, solid campaign with no microtransactions or anything, and we'll pay $60 for it, and that'll be us done. And The Witcher 3 proves that can work. The problem is, it requires people to spend a lot of time carefully crafting a really good game, which a lot of developers and publishers don't really want to do because that sounds a lot like effort. But if we do have to have microtransactions, there's certainly more benevolent ones that we could have than we had in, say, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. You can have microtransactions like we had, say, in Rainbow Six Siege, where my understanding from speaking with Matt, I've kind of played a bit of Rainbow Six Siege, he's played a lot more than me, is like basically they're entirely aesthetic. You can just buy skins for your guns and your operator or whatever, and a lot of people choose to do that, but it doesn't have any impact whatsoever on the game balance. It's just a thing people like doing. You're just basically tossing in a little bit of extra money over to the devs because you happen to like a little extra thing. And I like little micro DLCs to just add a little extra thing. It's why I quite like the way Paradox does its DLCs. And just to be clear, like, I'm mainly speaking from experience of Stellaris, but I kind of looked into this and the other games kind of Paradox have done in preparation for what Stellaris is going to be. And let's be very, very clear, Stellaris has had only like one little bit of proper paid DLC so far, and that was £5 for just a bunch of new plant races. That was massively overpriced. But if we look at the stuff that's still flipping coming out for Crusader Kings 2, years after that game launched, like I think they just got like a plague event or something that was like, hang on, let me check this. Yeah, here we are, The Reaper's Due. This came out very recently for Crusader Kings 2. So it adds a whole bunch of new mechanics on the Black Death and world-shaping epidemics. So if you want that particular thing in your game, that happens to be about £7.50 at the moment. That's fine. And if you want to kind of just make some small aesthetic changes, you can have like, you know, an individual set of like skins and portraits and unit packs. And like there's a, you know, Iberian unit pack for Crusader Kings 2. 54 pence at the moment, okay? So if you happen to want that, 54 pence, fine. Early Western clothing pack, 54 pence. The Song of Roland, whatever the hell that is, 79 pence. Songs of India, 33 pence. Saxony pack, 33 pence. Now that I'm totally down with. Like, if I get properly into Stellaris, and by the way, I'm already kind of properly into Stellaris, I suspect I may be slightly addicted to Stellaris, in fact, I can totally imagine myself, in a year's time, like, going through the DLC of Stellaris and being like, yeah, sure, you know what, I'll give you 50 pence for these new units, and 50 pence for these ships, and then, you know, here's £5 for a big universe-changing event that I may or may not wish to kind of add in for a bit more variety when I'm playing the game, and diddly-diddly-dee. I could totally go for that. I don't mind little bits of micro DLC just to add little things into the game. Just kind of tossing in the odd pound to add in something that I actually like. Yeah, I'm totally down for that, and I think that's a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. But I think there's enough evidence that there are big releases that still work just fine. Like, Just Cause 3 was not particularly aggressive. I don't think there's any microtransactions in that. And that had a DLC pack and a season pass, but, like, they didn't really push it very hard, and I don't think even that many people played the DLC packs, to be honest. But Just Cause 3 was just successful because it was a really beautiful, well-put-together base game, which thus sold pretty well. So I think there's enough evidence there are games that sell perfectly well. And alternatively, more and more publishers, AAA publishers, could actually turn their attention to producing smaller stuff. And a lot of them are. Like Square Enix, through their collective program, is now basically publishing indie games. That was what the Turing test was. That came out of that. Life is Strange was like the prototype of the program that would become the Square Enix Collective, which has now produced the Turing test and some other stuff as well. That actually looks really cool. I've actually seen, they were at EGX Resd this last year, and there's a bunch of really interesting games coming up out of the Square Enix Collective. Ubisoft has done similar things, so that's where Grow Home and Grow Up came up from. That kind of came out of that as well. Like, more and more studios are basically acting as the publishers for small indie games, and I'm totally up for publishers doing that because they've produced some really, really fantastic games. So could potentially small games that were very cheap to produce being pushed by a very big publisher act as a very profitable side of the business that helps to fund the production of AAA games that get enough headline-grabbing attention that the publisher stays relevant and in the public eye enough to keep pushing the indie games? Ultimately, could indie games be paying for AAA games? Don't know. Maybe that's pushing things a little bit far, but possibly. Anyway, few different ideas there, but very interesting question, very, very complex. Someone says they're planning to start their own YouTube channel soon and asks, as they already have the creative side sort of planned out, whether I had any tips, particularly from a business side of things, so I have no idea how any of that works. I really wouldn't worry about the business side of YouTube while you're getting started. And please don't take that as me being like patronising and condescending. What I mean is, when you start off, YouTube is very small and very thankless, and it takes a very long time to grow. We spent basically our entire first year getting up to 1,000 subscribers, and that is deemed very, very fast growth for a new channel that's not from someone who's got like something else they're coming from. So like if, for example, I'd previously been well known as a gaming journalist and then I went into the YouTube channel as well, then I've got people I can funnel into my YouTube channel. Or if I've got an established community, I can say, hey, and now I'm doing this. But like as I was starting from basically nothing, like building a channel from nothing up to 1,000 inside a year, that's deemed really, really fast. I know that because I hang around on Reddit's Let's Play subreddit and try and help out the new channels. In fact, I'm actually doing an Ask Me Anything about like how to run a channel with them in a couple of weeks. I think it might be 2 weeks from today, in fact. Hang on, it's 2 weeks from today, so it'll be in my calendar. No, actually it'll be a week today. It'll be a week today, so I'll be kind of just giving advice to small channels on kind of how to kick off over there, because I do like kind of trying to help out those guys as best as I can. But the thing is, while you're kind of in that stage, basically you're making no money whatsoever, because like even though you're making a tiny bit of money, there's no way the amount of money that you're making is going to offset the cost of like, you know, the microphone that you might have bought, or like, you know, if you're paying for a monthly fee for an editing suite, if your preferred editing suite is like one of the ones where you pay monthly for it, or, you know, while you're small, there's a good chance you won't necessarily get review code from certain publishers or devs. So as a result of that, you have to actually kind of buy the games yourself. So there's a really good chance you will be making a loss while you're doing it, which is fine, because if you're doing it as a hobby, you expect to make a loss as a hobby. Like, you know, if you enjoy fishing and you go fishing, you don't expect necessarily to make a profit from fishing. Or maybe you do. I don't know. If you go fishing, do you ever like sell the fish, or do you just eat the fish? And if you eat the fish, you didn't need to buy dinner that night, so could you potentially make I guess you would ultimately make a profit fishing. We should all be fishermen. Never mind, don't worry about fishing. Anyway, the most important point is like, while you're doing that first year, and it can be more than a year, it can be like years. I've seen channels that have like been around for years, and some of them can be pretty decent. You know, they've put some good stuff together, but they just aren't lucky, or they haven't found quite the right niche. And I consider myself incredibly lucky, ludicrously lucky, to have been doing this for, what is it, three and a third? Yeah, it's not quite 3.5. It's like three years and a few months. To have been doing this like 3 years and 3 months. To have a community of over 210,000 subscribers. That is generally very, very fast growth indeed. That puts me into like a really, really lucky tiny top percentage of YouTubers to have got there, even though in the grand scheme of YouTube, it's still really, really small. And during that first year, therefore, things will be very, very thankless. You don't need to worry about the business because the business is making so little money, it barely even counts. What matters in that year is you're having fun. Because if you're not having fun, you're not going to keep doing it. Because YouTube, if you kind of want to kind of push it and make it bigger, and you actually vaguely have goal in the long term to kind of make it into a bigger, more substantial thing, you have to basically be able to do it for a year or two or more, even if you're getting like really little thanks for it and no reward for it. So it's got to be something you enjoy doing for its own sake. So I would say, don't worry about the business side for now. Get going. Just find something you like doing. Make sure you have fun playing, because you know you have fun playing, but you don't necessarily know you have fun recording. Think like people assume commentary is really easy. Commentary is a really learnt skill. You can go back and watch my earliest videos, and my commentary is terrible, and also my editing was terrible. Everything was terrible. Generally, everyone's terrible when they start. Like, go to your favourite channel and like arrange their videos from oldest to newest, and then watch their earliest videos, and I guarantee your favourite YouTubers who you love now were terrible when they started. Commentary is a learnt skill, and it can be something that some people don't enjoy. Like, I've literally seen this, and sometimes it's kind of heartbreaking. I've seen people talking on the Let's Play subreddit about how they really want to be YouTubers, and they love, like, watching YouTube videos, and they really want to do it themselves, but every time they sit down, they can't commentate, even if they're normally really chatty with their friends. But, like, in the specific scenario of sitting in front of a screen and having to talk about what they're seeing in front of them, and being kind of, like, witty and chatty, and sounding enthusiastic about it, they can't do it. It's just not something they can do. And that's really sad, because those people really want to be able to do this, but it is a skill not everyone's going to have. So make sure you enjoy commentating, and make sure you enjoy playing while commentating, and make sure you enjoy editing, and make sure you enjoy the process of managing a channel and stuff like that. Because until you know that you actually genuinely enjoy all of that, then like there's not much point doing it. Because if it is just going to be a hobby, and even if it's really successful, it will be a hobby for like the first year, unless you're like ludicrously lucky and lightning happens to strike, then you've got to make sure that this is a hobby for you, is something you actually do enjoy doing. So focus on that for now, and if it starts taking off, comment in a future Patroncast asking for business advice again, and I promise I'll give you some actual proper business advice. I once said the couple from Firewatch is one of the best couples in gaming. I was wondering, who else is your favourite couple in gaming? Shepard Tarley. I adore Shepherd Tali. I love Tali so much. Tali is love. Tali is life. Tali is the best thing. I tell you, sorry, I can't remember if I've ever said this on the channel before. Because when I played Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, I did it with the same character. So I always played the same character through for the first time. So in Mass Effect 1, I romanced Liara. That struck me as the best option because I was playing as a male Shepherd. That was the first Shepherd I played through Mass Effect. It was a male Shepherd. So my only option in the first game was Ashley or Liara, and I hated Ashley even back then, so I went with Liara. Then the second game, of course, Liara's pretty much absent, so I dated Tali instead, and Tali was wonderful, and I absolutely fell in love, and Tali was amazing. Then in Mass Effect 3, you may recall right at the beginning of the game, you go to Mars, and Tali's not there because you were on like an Alliance ship that you took back to Earth. So Tali's not there, and then you go to Mars and you run into Liara at Mars University where she was doing research on the Prothean dig site, and Liara is basically like overtly, hey, I know you and Tali had a thing, but like we can still be together, right? And I literally put down the controller and went to go and get a cup of tea because I couldn't deal with this, because Liara had been like, you know, she was a bit psychotic and crazy in Mass Effect 2, but like she was like really intellectual and funny and stuff in Mass Effect 3, and she was like she was back to how she was in Mass Effect 1 again. It felt like Mass Effect 2 just took place at a bad point in her life. So all of a sudden, the ex-girlfriend's back and she's being kind of sexy and flirty and something, and I've got this girlfriend in Tali, but like we're having a long distance relationship. I'm not even sure we're still together because clearly I haven't seen her for months on end, and like I literally had to like put the controller down and walk away. You know, I went to ask Claire for advice. I asked Claire for advice, and I needed a hug because it was just I couldn't deal with this anymore. So I was like, I don't know. Like I was totally in Mass Effect 2 invested in Tali, but then Liara's back. Suddenly Liara's back to how she was, and suddenly like the ex wants me back. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do anymore. Claire advised me to stick with Tali if I recall correctly, possibly because I was basically asking her, hey, should I stick with my girlfriend or should I go back to my ex-girlfriend? And Claire was like, you should probably stick with your girlfriend, because she didn't know I was talking about Mass Effect. I hope she knew I was talking about Mass Effect and it wasn't just a metaphor. Ooh, I should probably check with her at some point about that. I stayed with Tali in the end, but Shepherd Tali, that's just beautiful. That is magnificent. But even that, like, though I like them as a relationship as a whole, I think arguably is a lot better than what's in Firewatch. Like, the dialogue that's written and the heat of the relationship in Firewatch is what makes it so amazing, and I do think it's some of the best writing in all of video gaming history. Stalker! The Stalker games. Oh, this has come up before. I actually own all of the Stalker games. I bought them during a Steam sale at some point, so I have literally every Stalker game. It's not going to happen this year because now we're into September. Like, between now and pretty much like the first or second week of December, like, everything's going to come out because this is the point where everyone throws their game out in time for Thanksgiving and then Christmas. So I don't really have time for like long extended series. But the moment we hit January, at that point there'll be like nothing coming out for months for the most part. So at that point I can do like all of the series on games like I hadn't got around to but I kind of want to do. Like, I'd like to do like, say, a week of Witcher 1 and then like the following month a week of Witcher 2 and then the following month like a week of The Witcher 3 or something is what I've got in mind. And I can do the Stalker games. Maybe I'll do a Stalker week like I did the Assassin's Creed week, where I do like a different Stalker game for a few hours each day and I kind of go through the franchise. That kind of might be fun. So Stalker will happen, I think, early 2017. And on a similar note, Vampire, The Masquerade Bloodlines and Alpha Protocol. I own both. I've heard fantastic things about both. I really want to get round to both, and I'm also going to give you the early 2017 answer, because between now and the end of the year, we're just going to be a little bit crammed. So starting from, like, the moment we hit October, we've got, like, Mafia 3, Gears of War 4, Battlefield 1, Last Guardian, assuming that actually launches and isn't a practical joke, Civilization 6, Skyrim Special Edition, Dishonored 2, Watch Dogs 2, Planet Coaster, Final Fantasy 15, the Star Trek Bridge Crew in VR thing, Ghost Recon Wildlands, which I don't care what you say, I think that looks really damn good. Yeah, those are all coming out basically before, like, the final one of those was like, the 1st of December is when Ghost Recon Wildlands is currently scheduled for. So that's a lot of new games I want to cover, and several of them I want to give like mini-series to. Like Watch Dogs, that was my game of the year that came out. So Watch Dogs 2 I want to do at least a mini-series on, and Dishonored 2 is the week before that, and obviously that deserves to get a full series because My opinion of Dishonored is complicated. I think Dishonored is a real flawed gem. It's fantastic, but there's a lot that's really wrong with it. And I would love to squeeze a Dishonored 1 series, or at least like a couple of videos in before Dishonored 2 comes out, and maybe I'll try and do that. In fact, I really should. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I should try and do Dishonored, at least give Dishonored a couple of videos before Dishonored 2, so I can give my context on it, and why I think Dishonored is simultaneously a fantastic game that makes some really, really bad mistakes. So, yeah, that's a good thought, actually. I'll probably add that to my calendar now. What was the first RTS game I played? I can't remember playing an RTS before StarCraft 1, and I was terrible at StarCraft 1. But StarCraft 1 was really hard to be good at, because StarCraft 1, like, it was just, I think, like, you couldn't have more than 12 units selected at a time, so you needed to, like, even just to have, like, a decent-sized army, you needed to be having multiple hotkeyed groups of units, so it's really, really hard to play well. So I was terrible at StarCraft 1, but I did play StarCraft 1 back in the day. I think that might have been my first RTS. And I really love StarCraft 2. I did a video on StarCraft 2, you may recall. How old is Tabby, and where did Tabby come from? Tabby is about 10 years old. Tabby has a very sad story behind her, actually, which is Tabby was adopted as a kitten by a family in North London. And what happened was they had her for 7 years, and then she went missing. And she'd been microchipped, so after she just didn't show up for a while, they kind of just had to sadly come to the conclusion she must have just been hit by a car. She must have gone out because she was an outdoor cat. She went out and about all the time. So just had to assume she must have been hit by a car. And that's all we know about Tabby. So that's up to about the age of like 7 or so. 2 years later, a cat gets brought into a vet elsewhere in North London, like quite a few miles away. Badly injured, really nasty bite wound to the leg. Something has taken a really nasty bite out of this cat. They scan for the chip and they find one. And they find it's this cat Tabby. So they call up the owners and they say, hey, we found your cat. And they're like, shit, that was 2 years ago. We thought she was dead. And, they say, well, would you like to come and pick her up? And the family says, well, we've got this dog now. We moved house and we got a dog. And the dog doesn't like cats. So, we know it's our cat, but we can't have her back. So Tabby couldn't go back to her original family. So Tabby spent a little bit of time, obviously, she had some surgery and she went to a foster home briefly. So we went to go and see her in this animal shelter. And like the thing is, obviously, we've got a flat that doesn't have garden access, so we needed an indoor cat. And basically Tabby now, even though she had been an outdoor cat, now had zero interest in the outdoor. She wanted to be an indoor cat. I think 2 years of what we can only assume was a very unpleasant life. She now, like, in the time we've had her, which is about 1 year and 3 months, she has never once gone up onto a windowsill and looked out of the window. She has never once shown any interest in the door. She does not want to go outside. She doesn't even care what the outside world looks like anymore. She just wants to be safe and inside. But, like, we went to see her because we'd seen, like, on the animal shelter's website that she was an indoor cat and she'd had a bit of a bad time. So we came to see her, and the first time we saw her, she was in, like, she was in, like, these little kind of, they're not really cages, but they're, like, little, don't want to say the word cell, but, like, they had little rooms with, like, a cage front on the front where they kept the animals while they were in the shelter. And she was right at the back, like, hidden away in the little kind of covered area, like, tucked away into a tight little ball, and she would not come out. Like, we offered her, like, little treats just outside, I think, because, we wanted to like, get to know her a little bit before we decided whether we wanted to adopt her or not. So we put little treats at the door, and she wouldn't move. She was terrified. She was absolutely terrified. She clearly hated it there, and she was just didn't know what was going on, and, it's horrible. It's horrible what happened to her. And we said, you know what, we're going to go and we're going to get a pub lunch, and we'll come back and we'll see if maybe she's come out of a bit of her shell, because we kind of said originally, like, if she won't interact with us at all, we can't adopt her because we don't know what her temperament's like. We don't know anything about her. So we went and got a pub lunch. We came back in the afternoon and she was exactly the same. She was still tucked up in the exact same position. You got the feeling like this is a cat that basically didn't move. She was so traumatized she would not move. And in the end, like, even though it was completely not what we'd said, I kind of decided I wanted her anyway because I felt so bad and I couldn't stand the thought of leaving her in this environment she clearly absolutely despised. So we adopted her that same day. And they kind of, they put her into the cat cage for us, a little kind of cat carrier. and I suspect, like, we didn't see her being put into the cat carrier, but I suspect she was not happy with it. So we brought her home, and she spent most of the next kind of couple of weeks, like, you know, we brought her in, we tried her into a couple of different rooms, like, you know, we read various things, and some people were like saying, hey, you might want to try, like, you know, keeping her in one room, and then another person was like, hey, try the bathroom, because the smells might be something, so, you know, we tried her in a couple of different locations, and what we did was we got her a little covered bed, this purple covered bed. So she basically, like, she came out of the box and she decided she was going to be in there, and she curled up in there, and she would not come out of that thing for like a week. She wouldn't even come out to eat. So what we needed to do was we literally kind of got like little biscuits of like kibble for cats, and we like put the biscuits one by one into the box, and then withdrew our hand. She didn't like eating it when our hands were in the box, so she would eat the biscuits one by one, then we would put another biscuit in, and then put, you know, step away, and then she'd eat that one biscuit, and that's how we had to feed her when we first got her. So that was, you know, really, really sad. It was really sad to see her like this, but very slowly over the past year, she's come out of her shell a lot. She's still very nervous and very skittish. Like, if you walk around too fast with shoes on, so there's too much clomping, or you're walking around too heavily, she'll like look a bit panicked, and she'll occasionally go and hide under the sofa. But for the most part, she, you know, she comes out and about, she wanders around, she'll come and like lie on the bed and whatever, and she'll come and be with you, and, you know, she wants to get attention. She's picked up a couple of quirks that we don't really know the origin of. Like, she refuses to eat unless she's had some petting. So like when you put some like biscuits down for her, some fresh biscuits, like, she'll basically come and get you and meow at you to make you come through to the living room and sit on the sofa, and then you've got to stroke her for a bit, and after she had a bit of stroking, then she'll go and eat the biscuits. But she doesn't like eating the biscuits until she's had some stroking. That little kind of purple box I mentioned, we still have that. It's available to her if she ever wants to go and hide in it. I haven't seen her go in that purple box for months. For most of the time, she's just hanging out on a bed or on top of a sofa, and she's really, really chill, and she just kind of, you know, follows people about, and she purrs a lot and meows a lot. So yeah, she's come a long way, but it was tough when we first had her. It was very heartbreaking to kind of watch the state she was in when we first adopted her, but that's how she is now, and that's lovely. When I was preparing the current New Vegas videos, I said there were two other ideas I had in mind. What were they? They were New Vegas Kill Everything Remastered and the Dust mod. And both of those will probably happen sooner or later, I just don't know when. New Vegas introduced the mechanic of being able to blend in with factions by wearing their clothes, but it didn't actually end up doing that much with it. Is that something you'd like to see in the Fallout franchise in future? Yeah, I think it was a really interesting idea. Though, to be honest, it was more just like a side mechanism of the faction system and a proper faction reputation system, which is more what I'd like to see back. And especially like the cleverness of having two, rather than being like one meter, where you like gained and lost points and reputation on a single meter, having a plus meter and a minus meter, and thus having your reputation be where you lay across those two metrics, where if you'd done like loads of good but a bit of bad, then you actually had a reputation that reflected that. That was genius, and that is what we really need to see back. A proper, complex, grid-based reputation system. That's more important to me than the disguisers. Will there be anything more for Hitman Bangkok? Probably not at this point. In all fairness, I found like the most interesting stuff I do in Hitman is, I think, the full story videos, and I haven't really seen anyone else doing those, so I really enjoy putting those together. Those are really, really fun. It's the most interesting bit of Hitman for me anyway, because I really think like the stories and finding all the different stories and how the characters interact and all their secrets and all their like secret conversations when you kind of make them go into the right place at the right time. I think that's the most interesting bit of Hitman for me anyway. Like, the interesting thing about the later levels of Hitman is because they're like getting tougher and they have to get harder because it's later levels, they're kind of taking some of the freedom out of the game, and that means there's less options for doing Sue Tony Silent Assassin. Like back in Sapienza, there's lots of different ways you could have done Sue Tony Silent Assassin, whereas in like Thailand, there's basically only like one or two ways you can do it. Maybe I'm being a bit unfair. There's like probably more than a couple of ways, but it's relatively much more restricted, so I don't think it's as interesting. I think the full story stuff is a lot more interesting than Sue Tony Silent Assassin runs. Have I ever played Sid Meier's Pirates? No, actually. I know, like, it's considered a huge cult classic. It was never my thing. Question, though, do you think, like, if I'd never played it before, and thus I didn't have any nostalgia for it, does it still stack up today? Is it still worth playing now today? Or if I don't have nostalgia for it and I don't really kind of, you know, I don't play it with full knowledge of the context of what those sorts of games were like at the time, because I was never really into the adventure game genre, do you think it would still stack up today? Because if so, might give it a look, but I'd be curious to know what you think about that. Would I ever do a Fallout collab with Kaido Genesis? I know he's interested. Well, he's never messaged me about it. If he wants to email me, I'm totally open to it. If he's got an idea for something we could do together that would make sense to do together, he is more than welcome to email me, and I'm more than open to discussing it. The most recent elusive target got me thinking, do you ever catch yourself sacrificing in-game success for entertainment's sake? Like the through-the-ceiling kill was funny, and I imagine it would make a great end-of-video trainer, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense from my want to beat this elusive target standpoint. Does that sort of trade-off cross your mind while playing? Yes, all the time. And it's one of the really interesting things about Fallout 4 You Only Live Once that, of course, I am thinking about. Because the thing about Fallout 4 You Only Live Once is also what difficulty is it done on? Whether it should be done on survival or very hard. Because if it's done on survival, that kind of feels like more authentic. It feels like You Only Live Once ought to be done on survival. But if I'm doing it on survival, and thus there's no fast travel whatsoever, does that mean, like, because I'll need to be constantly cautious and every single thing that could go wrong could be devastating, does that mean, as a result, like, the whole thing will slow down so much that it's not very entertaining anymore? And then I have to factor in, okay, so if I wanted to do You Only Live Once on survival, I'd pretty much have to come up with a route that lets me rush to Kellogg and the end of the first act as soon as possible, because I need to get vertibirds as soon as possible. Not because vertibirds are fundamentally the most useful thing in the world, though they'll be absolutely very, very useful indeed during You Only Live Once, but just because otherwise it will be so slow and boring. So therefore, even though I probably wouldn't normally take on Kellogg until I was absolutely, like, you know, double 100% sure I could just nail him easily, I might have to take on the Kellogg fight and all the kind of the synths in Fort Hagen earlier than I'd like, purely so I can get the vertibirds to stop the series being dull. So that is indeed the sort of thing I do have to play with, and like that was actually also one of the reasons why I made the decision when I was doing Fallout 3 You Only Live Once not to rush to Operation Anchorage at like level 2. And like there is absolutely a really strong case for saying, you know what, you really need your stealth and your guns to be a certain level to put it off. But I could have done it way, way earlier. I could have got to the suit of invisible Chinese stealth armor way, way earlier than I did. But I kind of knew that if I did that, that would make the game less interesting. So arguably, I probably could have had an easier time of it in Fallout 3 You Only Live Once than I did by getting invisibility way, way earlier. But I decided against it, because I figured if I did it too early, then, like, you know, the series would be much shorter and less interesting and less dramatic, because I'd just be going around being invisible half the time. So it didn't feel like the right thing to do. So, like, I think there are entirely legitimate arguments for doing it when I did it anyway, because, yeah, as I say, you know, you want your guns and your stealth and your whatever to be absolutely maxed. Like, at the bare minimum, you'd want sneak and guns to be 100 before you did Operation Anchorage for safety. But I could have done it earlier. I just decided against it, and that was kind of one of those decisions. Am I a sports fan at all? What is my favourite EPL team? I don't know what an EPL is, so whatever sport that is, no. No, I'm not. Skyrim! I'm thinking Skyrim will actually happen this year. When Skyrim Remastered comes out, I actually think genuinely that will be something that is worth doing at that point. It will be a good excuse for me to kick off a new Skyrim series. I would expect it will be a Saturday series. Like, let me think. Hang on, just look at the timings here. Mass Effect 2 has no chance of being over at that point. I could, though. That's just after Civilization 6 starts. But Civilization... I don't know. Okay, I'll find some way of making it work. I'll do something with Skyrim at the time when the Special Edition comes out. I know technically the Special Edition is, like, probably going to look worse than modded Skyrim, but it will probably also be more stable than modded Skyrim. So what I'll probably do is I'll like do a new Skyrim series, and it'll be some form of challenge, and I kind of have one in mind. I've been speaking about this for a while. I kind of have one in mind, and we'll do the Skyrim Special Edition, and then we'll probably also introduce some subtle modding into it as we go along as well. Because Skyrim's like Dishonored taken up to 20 for me, which is, it's so damn good, but also there's so many bad decisions in it. Like, I think Skyrim is really the game for me that kind of epitomizes what's brilliant but also terrible about the way Bethesda does games. It's got so many Bethesda-y mistakes, but equally it's so wonderful at times. So we'll discuss Skyrim when we get to it, but yeah, there will be Skyrim later this year. That will happen this year. In fact, that's only like 2 months away at this point. Splinter Cell. I have literally zero relationship with Splinter Cell, but if I recall correctly, I did at one point buy the entire franchise in a Steam sale. Yes, there we are. I think I just bought a flipping Tom Clancy bundle at some point, because I own Tom Clancy's End War Ghost Recon Future Soldier, Ghost Recon Desert Siege, Ghost Recon Island Thunder, Rainbow Six 3, Rainbow Six 3 Athena's Sword, Rainbow Six Siege, Rainbow Six Lockdown, Rainbow Six Vegas, Rainbow Six Vegas 2, Splinter Cell, Chaos Theory, Double Agent, Conviction, Blacklist, and oh no, the next one's a Tomb Raider game. So I don't own Tom Clancy's Angel of Darkness. That's not a thing that exists. But I own all of them. Actually, question for you, where should I start? Because I bought all of them in a bundle, so I don't really know where to start, to be honest. Let me know what would be a good starting point for the franchise, and then after I've played that, which would be the good ones to play. Would I like to put out more videos and series to the audience? Yes, I would love to be able to produce more, but I feel like I'm kind of right now at like the maximum I'm capable of producing without quality starting to go down. I feel like I'm producing pretty much as I can do. And I feel like we do, like someone else was pointing out, we're doing a lot of double video days at the moment, and like, that's kind of important to me because I really want to feel like now that we've got Patreon running at a really solid level, I want to feel like I'm living up to what people are expecting of me. You wonderful people are ensuring I can do this full time, and a lot of people have subscribed and a lot of people like what I do, and I really therefore want to be producing as much as I can without going overboard, and like I don't want to risk ever like burning out or the quality suffering. But I want to be able to produce as much as I can. I'm producing like probably an average of like 10 videos a week, which is probably about what I do. I probably put out about 10 videos a week. I would say that's about decent, especially as like every single one of them is edited to varying degrees. Like Stellaris is a relatively easy editing job, and Fallout's relatively a complicated editing job, but they're all edited to some degree or other. So like I feel like I'm about a happy place right now, where I feel like I'm producing enough videos that people are specifically pointing out, hey, wow, we're getting loads of double videos, which is great. That's where I want to be, but I don't really want to push myself to do much more than where I am right now, because I feel like we've kind of got a happy place at the minute. When I move on to Civilization 5 after Stellaris, which is the plan, by the way, I think I said that one or two Patroncasts ago, will I be playing with the two main expansions installed? Don't worry, I did buy all like the expansion packs and everything, so we will have like all the expansions installed. Hang on, let me just actually double check everything I've actually got installed on this thing already. Here we are on top of Civilization 5. I also own, having picked it up in the bundle, the Civ scenario packs for Denmark, Korea, the Mongols, Genghis Khan, Polynesia, Civ pack for Babylon, Civ 5 Digital Deluxe content, the Explorers map pack, the Conquest of the New World Deluxe scenario, Cradle of Civilization for the Americas, Asia's Mediterranean and Mesopotamia, double Civ and scenario pack, Spain, Isabella and Inca and some other stuff, scenario pack Ancient Wonders, and Sid Meier's Civilization 5, Gods and Kings, Brave New World, Scrambled Continents map pack, and Scrambled Nations map pack. So I will have absolutely all of those. Don't panic. Hopefully that's all of them. If you think I need something on top of all of those, let me know, but hopefully that will be enough. Have you played the Red Alert games? No, they were never a big thing for me. As I say, I was more into StarCraft 1 back in that era. I've got a 10-year-old nephew who's very into Greek mythology. Any recommendations for age-appropriate books or games to feed that interest? I would recommend the board game Seven Wonders. It's actually Claire's favourite board game. We own it. It's a bit of a house favourite. I don't talk about board gaming very often on the channel, but we do actually have a really big collection of board games, and we do like board gaming with our friends. But yeah, Seven Wonders is... yeah, I think a 10-year-old who, like, knows a little bit about gaming and board gaming would be able to handle it. Maybe it's a little bit more appropriate for more like 12 plus, I guess. It might be a little bit much for a 10-year-old depending on his particular attention span. Because the scoring system is maybe a little bit complex. Basically, you're like an ancient civilization, and you're like, building one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, and also building up your military and your economy and your culture and stuff at the same time. And there's like, money and research and stuff. The mechanisms are fairly complicated. It almost feels more like an actual kind of strategy and management game in a video game sense, but it's done really well as a board game, so I personally would recommend that. Would I ever play Hot Dogs, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades VR? I might do. Honestly, like, it doesn't excite me particularly, because I'm not sure if this is like a cultural thing, but like, if you kind of tell me, hey, there's this VR game where you can like go to a shooting range and load guns and shoot guns, I'm just like, I have so little interest in that. Maybe this is just a cultural thing, but as a British person, that like, I hear that, and I've seen the trailer for it, and I've heard people describe it before. I'm just like, but I don't understand what's the appeal of like loading and firing a gun at a target range in VR. I don't understand. Like, there's so many more things I'd rather do in VR than that. Like, literally, there's a, I think it's called Pane in the Glass, which is a window cleaning simulator. And, like, I personally think I'd be more interested in playing that than playing a game on a shooting range, because I just don't understand the appeal of a shooting range game, just because maybe I don't have any form of cultural attachment to a firearm. But maybe I'll give it a look at some point. But just for me, somehow, it just doesn't interest me. During a rut, would a rad stag's two heads fight each other? Logically, yes, but equally, I kind of get the feeling from, like, the model of the rad stag, the two heads are kind of like, they can't really turn very much, if only because the antlers on each are kind of, like, locked together. They wouldn't be able to turn to face each other, so I would strongly suspect, therefore, that as they can't really turn to face each other, and as they presumably, as you never really kind of see any lack of coordination, they're kind of, like, sharing the legs and they have good coordination. As a result of that, probably they wouldn't. With August over, one of my top 3 games of the year so far. Easy. That is Hitman, Stellaris, and Firewatch. Probably with Hitman in 3, Firewatch in 2, and Stellaris in 1. There is a really good chance Stellaris is going to be my game of the year at this point. What could really displace it reasonably at this point? I think the only 2 games I think have a really, really good realistic chance of displacing it are Dishonored 2 and Watch Dogs 2. Because, as I say, both of them look really, really interesting. I really love the original Watch Dogs. It was my game of the year back when that came out, so that could theoretically be amazing. And Dishonored 2, if it builds upon Dishonored and fixes some of the stuff that was broken in Dishonored, could also be amazing too. I just don't know. Will we be seeing more Telltale games on the channel? Possibly. Possibly. It kind of feels a little bit overdone at this point. Like, everyone who's interested in, like, The Walking Dead has, like, you know, already played The Walking Dead or watched someone else play The Walking Dead. So when, like, the story is all about, like, choices and consequences and the surprise of, you know, what the consequences of what you did were, and, like, the tension of whether you're making the right or wrong decisions, in a world where I'm making those decisions blind, but, like, the audience knows what's going on and, like, knows what the consequences are going to be, I'm not sure it really works as a series so well. So I might do a bit more of the Batman stuff as that comes out, and I'll see how that is, because, like, the first Batman episode did, like, alright, but not spectacularly, so I might kind of do a bit more of that and see if people are interested in watching more of it, because, like, if, like, the viewing figures have really dropped from the first episode because people don't care, then we'll see. But, like, I'll give it a go. Because in all fairness, like, the first episode of Life is Strange was just, like, okay. But, like, the second episode was really, really phenomenal. And then it was just, like, a series I was really emotionally invested in. So we'll see how the second episode of Batman actually is. But, like, to my mind, like, a story-driven episodic game like that, it's kind of important you're playing it as it comes out, because then you can be part of the speculation going forward, and, like, you're discovering it as your audience is discovering it. And as I watch something and it's shocking to me or sad to me or happy for me, hopefully it is to the audience as well. So I'm not sure, like, doing, like, an episodic story game where you already have all seen it and thus know what all the choices are going to mean, and I haven't yet. I don't know whether that's going to work, so I think you might just find it frustrating, but we'll see. Will there be a Recore video? Yes, actually. I think Recore looks really, really cute. I've heard some worrying things about it. Some people seem a little bit concerned about the quality, but I think it looks really, really cute and cool, and I kind of just want to play with it for a bit. It'll probably just be a one-off video, though. Did Claire ever make a cake that I asked for in a recent podcast? She did make me a small cake for my birthday. She made me a little lemon drizzle cake that was very nice. And seeing as you're a huge fan of Stellaris, have you ever thought about doing Crusader Kings 2? I have, but if I do... Well, the thing is, like, I'm obviously about to try and squeeze in a Civilization 5 series in time for Civilization 6 to come out, and then there'll be, like, presumably, if I enjoy Civilization 6, that will be a series. After that point, I don't know. I mean, if you had to choose between me doing Crusader Kings 2 or Europa Universalis... Wait, which one's that? 4! That's on 4 at the minute. Yeah, if you had to choose between Crusader Kings 2 and Europa Universalis 4, which would you rather see? Let me know. And is Grills Bears going to be making the trip to Far Harbor or Nuka World in September? I'm not sure he'll be going to either in September. There's a few more bits of the base game I'd like to kind of cover, but I wouldn't mind going over to Nuka World just to pick up some of the guns, actually. It might be fun to actually go to Nuka World first, because there's some really interesting guns for him there, so I might go there. How's Claire? Will we be seeing more of her on the channel? Yes, absolutely you will. Yes, Claire has been a little bit absent recently. Sorry about that. We do actually mean to be doing some stuff, by the way. We've kind of got some ideas in mind. And I've also been planning something a little bit bigger as well, involving Claire and Matt. So that will be coming soon. Well, when I say soon, not soon at all. There she is now. In fact, that noise in the background is the door opening. And finally, to end on one hell of a question, During the game, Oclos, you stated that 300 has the worst historical accuracy right after Herodotus' histories. I have to strongly disagree with you. Herodotus was widely ridiculed back in the day. I think it was done very unfairly. Now, the thing about my view on Herodotus isn't like, I don't mean it maliciously when I say that, like, he contains some utterly ridiculous, representations of history, which, to be clear, he does. Like, when he's talking about the Persian invasions of Greece, like, the number of soldiers he's actually kind of says came from Persia into Greece. There's been some really interesting work done, and like literally the number of soldiers he says marched against Greece, like there was not enough food in the world at that point to support that many soldiers on the move. Like the Greek land and the Persian supply lines physically couldn't have done it. Like 2/3 of the army would have just dropped dead of hunger because the army's too ridiculous. The best estimates we actually have is like the Persian armies that actually invaded Greece were probably numerically similar to the actual Greek armies that stood against them. It's like when we talk about the Persians' invasions, we talk about, 100 million people from all over the world and something, arrows blocking out the sun, as was in 300. But actually, as best we can tell, just based on literally the number of soldiers on the move that the amount of agriculture and supply lines that existed at the time could support, actually probably the Persians had pretty much the same number of people in their army as the Greeks had in theirs, which is obviously a lot less dramatic, but never mind, it all got a little bit lost in translation at some point. But the problem with Herodotus isn't that he is consciously a liar. Herodotus doesn't really have a concept of history, because the concept of history in terms of like proper historical inquiry and evidence gathering and stuff, like I would say really the true father of history is Thucydides, where there's some proper rigour and we can actually kind of look at what he says and we can actually say, actually that appears to match up to reality. There's a lot of detail here and it matches up very well with what we believe to be true. So Thucydides is really the father of history. Herodotus was doing the best job he could, but I think he also showed a lot of poor judgment insofar as he very often records things that clearly he heard from someone else, but he doesn't question any of it. There's like no real sense of filter or critical thinking going on in Herodotus. If he hears something, he just straight up records it as fact in like this big long narrative, even if like it makes no real sense. And it just feels to me like his biggest fault isn't that he's lying. He's not consciously lying. His biggest fault is that he doesn't treat anything critically. And maybe that's being unfair and I'm basically applying like an anachronistic standards to him, because I'm basically suggesting he ought to have been showing historical and like, research and academic rigor to something when those things didn't exist at the time. So it's not really a criticism so much as a comment on the fact that the period in which Herodotus was writing, there wasn't really any form of academic rigour that existed. But equally, he didn't invent it. And someone else not too long after, in the form of Thucydides, actually did. So if I do have a criticism of Herodotus, it's that he just wasn't anywhere near as good a historian as Thucydides, and both of them existed in a similar context of there not really having been a proper idea of history. But both of them having started from almost nothing, Thucydides actually did a really, really bloody good job, and Herodotus did a very, very bad one. So maybe he just wasn't cut out to be a historian. And on that bombshell about Herodotus, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap things up for now, because this is going to be a really, really, really bloody long one, actually. Yeah, this is going to be a very long Patroncast for whatever reason. I'm not sure if I've been talking like way longer than usual and answer the questions. I think I may have been talking for quite a while about YouTube and Nuke World at the beginning, which is why this one is quite long indeed. So let's end things off here. This has been the August Patroncast in September. September's will obviously kind of, the submission call will go out in September and we'll do it in October. As is tradition, it's intentional. I promise it's intentional. It's not me being lazy. This is the joke. It's fine. And by then there should be a whole bunch of exciting new games out that I can talk about there as well. And yeah, we should be well into the end of year rush at that point. So I'll probably be a little bit stressed. Thank you all so very, very much. I'm feeling particularly appreciative today in light of, some of the stupid stuff that YouTube's been doing. Even if, as I say, I think it will all kind of calm down when the dust settles. Even so, the fact that YouTube does just occasionally decide to just pull the stuff on us without any warning, it feels good to have, a solid backing from the community that means we can actually keep doing this, even if YouTube does itself just decide to mess everything up somehow. So on the off terrible chance YouTube messes everything up, at least I've got you guys. So thank you all so very, very much, and I will see you all again next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.